Pacific Northwest.
Time that it takes for a tier 3 first time letter to get here. It's a lesson 6 from a guy named Toby. I think he's in prison in Texas. You've just started me as a mentor tier 3, and I'm just curious as to how long the mail takes.
I'm a mentor.
It's been a little over a week, I think. He sent it out.
Oh, you know that he sent it to you already?
Yes, you have.
Well, you know, it's been a week. My guess is that it should be there very soon. But, you know, here I can just tell you what we've been experiencing in the office is that there's been a significant delay in our mail.
Oh, okay.
Significant. What you read about in the paper is a reality.
It seems fairly normal here in the Northwest. I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
In our town, yeah.
Yeah, we won't, some days we don't even, you know, normally our mail comes in, our lessons, typically we pick them up from the post office in bins. And, you know, there have been times when there'll be no bins at all to pick up, which is highly unusual. And then you can tell that there's delay. I know in our local post office that we use, there's staffing issues, etc. But I just know our experience has been there's delays.
I see. Oh, just need to be patient.
Just be patient.
My weaker things. My patience is not as great as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is Shirley Ewing. I'm here, but I'm eating lunch, so I'm not showing my face.
Well, you just enjoy your lunch.
Thank you. I'm listening.
We've got all sorts of time frames on our call. Time zones. We'll give it another minute or two for people to kind of pop in. It's good to see you all, by the way. I always enjoy it when I have a crowd in my home. It's one, because I kind of have the gift of hospitality, and food is really my love language. I wish I could give you all something to eat and have a little snack.
Your wife didn't have to clean house for the meeting.
No, I don't think she would. She would say, when are you going to get on it? You know, my wife knows me well. I'm more of a bulk cleaner, and she comes in behind me and kind of gets the details.
When my kids were growing up, I used to say, my house looks like it was cleaned by a bunch of little boys.
Right. You know, I'll vacuum and I'll mop the floor and I'll do all these things. But then a couple days later, she'll come by and she says, you don't get the corners very well. Alicia, are folks still popping in? Oh, it kind of looks like
they are, yeah.
Nice. I'll ask this, is this anybody's first time to one of these gatherings?
See one raised hand from Joe.
This is my first.
Your first time?
My first also.
My first.
Oh, wow. There's
Lots of firsts.
This is my first.
what?
Very cool.
I hope we don't disappoint. For those of you that are new, first time today, we started doing this, golly, it's been a number of months. How long has it been, Alicia? Is this?
We started back in March.
Back in March, we've been doing a monthly and just playing with the times and because we have multiple, we have to go across the country in time zones and what works best. And so this is where we've landed. And so we're going to consistently stay on this calendar cycle that we have here, which Alicia has tried to point out to me. It works, it's consistent. And when I look at a calendar, it doesn't feel consistent, but it is. And so we'll stick at these times. We do 2 English versions, one in the evening and one in the afternoon. And then we always do a Spanish language one as well, which has been well attended. So they're a lot of fun that Jose, who's in our department, leads.
Before you get started, Doug, I'll do a bit of some Zoom things since we have a lot of first timers at least joining us, letting you guys know. I'm working behind the scenes to make sure that Zoom is only picking up the audio of the person talking. So if you notice that your microphone goes red and gets a line through it, that's just me making sure that your background noises aren't getting picked up. Normally what we do is Doug will present some teaching and some tips for writing students. We've been doing a series now on letter writing. This is part 2 today. But then when Doug finishes what he's prepared for his presentation, we'll open it up for some question and answer where you can type your question into the chat. And I'll make sure that Doug gets asked that question, or if you want to use Zoom to raise your hand. And to do that, if you click, if you're in on a computer, you can click on participants and it should open a window, and then there should be 3 dots somewhere where you can click on that to raise your hand. If you are on a mobile device, I believe it's 3 dots either in the top right-hand corner or the bottom right-hand corner. That should give you some options to raise your hand. And so you can do that during our Q&A time. And of course, if we get to the point where there's not a lot of questions, we'll just let you know you can unmute yourself and ask. But want to make sure we get the questions, all the questions asked that we can. Yeah. So I think our numbers are starting to steady, Doug.
I think so. That's great. There's 50 some of us here, it looks like, which is just awesome. We can gather like this. I think that every time that we do this, here I'm in West Michigan. Alicia is, a co-worker of mine, but she's in Indiana, and you guys are spread out all over the place. And normally we would just never be able to do this, gather as a community and really as a church family to talk about serving those that are incarcerated. Before I get started, I'll just give you a couple of updates after I change my screen because I get so big. 2 things I wanted to update you on. One is about our lessons. Kind of go back to the beginning of the pandemic that we've had, that we continue to be in, and will probably continue to be in for an unforeseen future until things start to settle down. Especially for those of you that may be new to the ministry, the pandemic really wreaked havoc across prisons and wreaked havoc with prison ministries that go inside to volunteer inside prisons. Yet Crossroads Crossroads was one of the few prison ministries that was able to continue to do what they do. And it was really only by God's grace, because it really was uncertain when this all started. You know, we had 140 volunteers that came into our office every week just to make the whole system flow. And suddenly our doors, we only could have 2 or 3 people in the building. And, you know, we just got it worked out that many volunteers were able to do what they were doing in the office. They would come, you know, into our parking lot, pick up bins of lessons and all the other things, and, you know, do inputting from home. And we were able to keep those lessons going to you. And for the most part, I sense that few of you saw any hiccups along the way. But part of the challenge with that was that at the same time, to keep that whole system going, we felt that we only had the capacity to maintain what we had as far as taking new students in. We couldn't take in new students for a period of time. And we just didn't have the manpower to do that. And so, you know, with people being released and attrition and things like that, our student numbers kind of leveled off and then dropped a bit. And so we were able to get our systems in place to the point where we could start taking on new students. And we had a pile of new student requests to come in. We processed all them. And then we started sending our current students what we call Spread the Word. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it's a card that they can hand out to their fellow prisoners, their bunkies or other people around the prison, where they could introduce them to Crossroads and they could sign up to be new students. So we've started doing that. Our numbers are starting to slowly climb. And then to also back it up, we had to get to the point where I know a number of you were taking extra lessons. You would do more than 1 tier 1 lesson. Some of you were doing 2, some of you doing 3, some of you doing 4 because you enjoyed it so much. And quite frankly, we asked you to do that because we had so many students that needed to be served. Well, when it started to drop, at that time we asked, can you just take 1 student for a period of time? Well, currently we're at a point now, as the numbers start to grow, and as we were talking about, the mail system has been rather erratic. There have been a couple of times where our lesson in our office, there were not what we call capacity, and I won't go into that, but there weren't enough lessons in our office to forward that week's batch off to mentors. So in the last 6 weeks or so, there was two weeks in there where we had to email you and said there won't be a lesson coming next week. And what I'm just trying to do here is just keep you informed, because you are the ministry, that if that happens again, because it could in the foreseeable future, I don't know, but I just wanted you to be informed that don't be surprised if you see an email come to you in short notice to say we will not be forwarding lessons next week. And now so now you know the reason behind it. It's just a combination of things that we just don't have enough lessons in the office to forward the whole batch, because we try to forward like 2,500 in a week. And if we don't reach that capacity, we won't mail them out, okay? The second thing I wanted to talk about is our prisoner art project. Hopefully most of you are familiar with that. We've written about it. We've shared it on this venue. Ellie came one time. We want him to come back to this venue. He does such a great job. You see the art in threads. And so we've developed quite a beautiful traveling art show. Well, we've had a number of those on our schedule to do across the country. In fact, we were supposed to do one in Iowa in 2 weeks. But right now our ministry has a travel, I can't travel. we in the ministry aren't allowed to travel, and for good reason. And so what we've decided to do in South Central Iowa is to have a virtual art show. And if you're from the Pella, Des Moines area, you will probably already have gotten a save the date for that. And we're really excited about having a community, you know, just a smaller area art show where those from that area can actually come collectively as a smaller community, as a smaller church, and join together as friends and family and invite their friends to offer the opportunity just to be a community together on mission. And so we're going to see how that goes, because we would like to see if we can offer that further out to those of you in communities where there's other mentors that actually have an art show to talk about the art. So I'm really excited about it. We'll tell you how it goes, and if it goes well, we'll probably say, hey, let's give it a try again. All right. All right. So that's all I wanted to share at the beginning. So last time we gathered, we had what I'm calling letter writing workshop number 1. And so today we're going to have letter writing workshop number 2. And we're going to continue this for a little while. And I'll tell you who our next speaker is at the end. So the last time we gathered, gave you some of the biblical principles behind letter writing, just some suggestions on what a letter could look like. I'm thinking, some of you write just beautiful letters that don't follow the sequence, so don't think that you have to follow the way that I'm telling you to do it. My hope is that you just get some ideas to maybe freshen up your letters, or to help you if you get stuck writing letters. So last week we discussed greeting. I broke the letter writing up into 4 parts. The greeting and the opening paragraph is what we talked about last time we were together, because your opening paragraph really sets the tone of your letter. And it's also an opportunity to share, kind of open up the discussion. You be the first one to share yourself, to share pieces of you and what you're doing, who you are, maybe pieces of what it looks like where you live. And then today we're going to talk about the body of the letter and the closing. So really there's 4 parts. There's the greeting, the opening paragraph, the body of the letter, and the closing. So why don't we start with the first, thought we'd have a great verse to start when we start talking about letter writing. This one's from Colossians 4. Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. Why don't you go to the next one then? And so I thought this was a great relevant verse to what we are doing as a ministry. It says, to the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. The body of the letter is the message of what you want to share, remembering we are writing in an informal style with a personal tone. We talked about formal and informal last time. We're an informal letter. The key goal is to tie portions of your letter to the lesson, because in the end, through your presence and encouragement, we are given permission to share truth. All right, next one. So what is the body of the letter composed of? It's really, from my perspective, we're reflecting on the lesson, we're encouraging and engaging with the student, and we're reminding the student God loves them. And as we go further in it, one of the tips that I wanted to give you was that as you're writing your students, try to use their first name 2 or 3 times in the letter. And a good location to do that is when you start shifting the flow of your letter. All right, the next one is the reflection on the letter. Let her catch up. So this is a spot where we can start talking about what we're learning, what the lesson, start talking about the lesson. This is where you can talk about what the lesson meant to you, and some of the additional Bible verses that are attached to the lesson that weren't maybe in the lesson, but that you felt you wanted to share. I see that a lot in people's letters. I was looking at a lesson yesterday. For most of our Bible lessons, I happen to have Great Truths of the Bible, lesson 10 here. And so when we talk about what did the lesson mean to you, many of our lessons have a theme to each lesson. And this one really has a theme regarding the church. And so this is a great opportunity for, if this was your lesson, you could talk about the church. What does the church mean to you? How has it been important in your life? How should we be as the church? What does it mean for the church? How should we be reflecting ourselves in this time of turmoil? And then another suggestion for you, and I just went in there, and there's pieces within each of these lessons that you can just go to any part of it and pull a piece out, but there are sometimes pieces in here that may need some clarification for our students. And out of this lesson 10, I honed in on a question that said, how did Jesus describe believers in Matthew 5:13 and 14? And because this is one that I had to learn about when I was new to learning about the Bible. Because in verse 13, Matthew, the question is, well, actually the fill in the blank says, you are the salt of the earth. This is how Jesus described believers. Okay, you are the salt of the earth. And so I'm thinking, well, what is that word salt? What does that mean? What does it mean for being the salt of the earth? Because salt is in other places in the Bible. It was in our first slide. And so, like I said, many students may not really know what does that context mean. And I had to think about it, and I've talked to people about it through the years. And I think about salt. Salt is savory, and it's a preservative. And how I take it, it's really a teaching moment to say it's how we live as Christians. It's how we present ourselves. For example, it centers around our integrity, our honesty, our loyalty. And so that's a great reflection, a great example of how you can reflect on the lesson. Is just pull a piece out from within that lesson and just hone in on that piece. You can fill up a good chunk of your letter with that. It's the same with the next one. You are the light of the world. And you have to ask yourself, well, what does that mean? Especially for new believers, what does it mean to be the light of the world? I got these lights, just two little lights above me, and it just takes a little light to shine throughout the whole room. And, because it's really, when we start thinking about light, we think about, well, our role is to help make Jesus tangible, to be his reflection, to be his ambassadors. And so that's what I pulled out of just those two little verses for examples to share today. And then the one thing I wanted to talk about was this piece about life application thoughts. I've gone into the prisons. I have many prisoner friends in this world. Many of them, many of those that are incarcerated, especially those that have been walking with the Lord for a lot of years, become very versed in their Bible. They can run circles around me and many other people. They can quote Bible verses. They can, if you're talking about something, they'll flip to the Bible and share something, out of one of the books I normally don't look at. But one of the challenges that they often have, it is not unusual that they have, is how do they apply those biblical principles that we're talking about in our lessons? How do they apply that to their lives? We have to remember that their world is very small, and there are avenues to apply them right where they're at. And there are avenues to apply them when they go home. And so if you can just share, if something comes to you that say, hey, this is how you can apply this to your life, please share that. I've learned through the years that that is much needed, that if they hear, oh, so they can tie the application and what they're learning together. All right, next one, Alicia. Encouragement and engagement. This is your opportunity to respond to their questions and their prayer requests, for you to write encouraging comments in their lessons, and to compliment the student on completing the lesson, because we have to remember to go back to where they're living. Prisons are noisy and chaotic places, and often it's difficult just to have time to concentrate on anything for any period of time. And I think about encouragement. I shared this last night, is that in one of these calls, I expressed to you that I was feeling discouraged in this time. My world had flipped upside down, as yours has. I was longing for what was. You know, I'm by myself much too much, whereas I'm wired to be with people. And so I expressed that, and through the next days, people were emailing me much encouragement, and it just changed my whole attitude. It changed my whole affect, and I was just so appreciative of it with just a few encouraging words. And so I just want to emphasize the power of encouragement, the power of what you write, just complimenting the student, encouraging them, you know, to be strong, encourage them to, you know, remember that they're not alone, because loneliness is such a challenge inside the prison. And just to give them a few kind words. And as far as prayer requests, I just want to share something with you. We get lessons sent back to our office for various reasons. There's not enough postage. The student may have moved. There's just a wide variety of reasons. And we've taken that opportunity to do kind of a quality assurance to say, okay, how are our mentors engaging with our students? Because otherwise we never see your letters unless they get sent back to our office, which doesn't happen on a scale like you would think it would. But so we took 100 of the letters and lessons and just looked at them and say, are prayer requests being acknowledged by our mentors? And so I thought I'd share this with you. 44%, so that just kind of shows you that you don't always get a prayer request from your students, because 44% of the students of those 100 lessons did not have a prayer request in them. But of the 56 that did, 18 of the mentors did not acknowledge it, and 38 of you did acknowledge the prayer request. So good job. But I think it's something that we can hone in on, because, you know, if someone is sharing a prayer request, it's something that's on their heart. And they're actually kind of sharing a piece of themselves, a piece that they may be praising or a piece that they may be struggling with. And it's really up to us to acknowledge them in whatever they're asking for prayer. And then if you're going to pray for them, say, I will commit to praying for that. And because and really it comes down to is that really as Christians, we're obligated to do that, because we of all people know that prayer changes things. Okay, next slide. And lastly, you can close out the body of the letter, sharing and reminding them that God loves them. This is a great place to share one of your favorite Bible verses and why it's important for you. I know many of you like to share hymns or parts of songs that are near and dear to you. I just want to, if you're going to do that, I want to encourage you to actually write the portion of the hymn that you like or the song, and not insert it as an addition. I know I've seen people where they'll photocopy, a hymn out of the hymnal and then attach it to the letter. I ask that you don't do that, because that is a trigger for the letter not to get into the prison. And lastly, if you've read my Just for Mentors, sometimes I will encourage you to write a blessing. People have said blessings over me in difficult times. People have said blessings over myself and my wife, Hendrina. Many times they've laid hands on us, and it has always been a powerful experience. And so I want to share a blessing over you as an example of what we can share. So my blessing over you as mentors today is I give thanks to you as you faithfully serve your students. May you remain confident in the truth you share, the Jesus Christ you serve, and the hope you bring. May you have a sense of God's presence as you travel through each day, knowing He loves you, cares for you, and will always bring light when darkness comes. Thank you for allowing me to do that. And then as we close, we're going to talk about the salutation, closing, and signing. I know this seems silly, but there are different ways to do that, and you probably each have your own way of doing that. But I'm going to share some of the ones that I use. I use sincerely if it's a little more, a little more structured type of thing that I'm writing. You can write, it was a privilege to review your lesson. These two I use more often. It's may grace and peace be on you. And especially when I think about who we serve, and when I write our students, I'll often say, stay strong in the coming days. And then the example I gave on the slide here, signing it off, Douglas, your mentor for this lesson. This one's primarily for Tier 1, because in Tier 2 and 3, you have a much closer relationship. You have an ongoing relationship where you know each other better, and you will be his mentor, or that person's mentor, the next time and the next time and the next time. But in Tier 1, you see this person just one time. And sometimes that is confusing for our students, especially those in the beginning of the courses. They'll end up writing us that if I just signed it, grace and peace to you, Douglas, and close it up and send it in. What happens is that sometimes the students will contact our office. They'll actually send us letters to the mentor that they last had, or the time before, thinking that they have a one-on-one mentor, because they didn't fully understand the process. And so we just want to encourage you to write, Douglas, your mentor for this lesson, for your Tier 1 students, so that they get a better understanding that it's just a one-time interaction with them. Okay. And then there's two last things I'll share, and then we'll open it up. I just want to encourage you. I'm going to talk about progress reporting. And this really comes from, we just did a kind of cleaned up our database a little bit, and we had 79 mentors that were behind on reporting for 6 or more lessons. And the reason that we do that periodically is that when you're doing progress reporting, not only is it helping us to get a better reflection on how our curriculum is working, and if there's any adjustments that need to be made, but it is the way that we know that that lesson was seen by you, the letter went out and it was mailed. So that's our way of knowing that that letter went to the prisoner or our students. And so with that group of 79, more than all of them had 6 or more lessons that had not had progress reporting. And so we had to put all of them on hold. I don't know if any of you were on hold for that, but we had to put them all on hold and contact them to correct that. So it's just an encouragement that when you're do your lesson, as soon as you're able, go ahead and do that progress report so that it doesn't get forgotten. And then next month, Aaron Mueller, many of you have met Aaron Mueller before. He's a dear friend of mine. He's a co-worker. He's our communications director, but he's also a pastor. We're going to continue the theme of letter writing, and he's going to talk about approaching your student in grace and truth. I think he'll do a great job. So just welcome you back next month on that. So that is that. So we'll open it up and we can just have a discussion.
All right. The first question that came in is something I was hoping to say. The slides themselves won't be made available, but we are recording every month's session. And so either last night's or this afternoon's video will be posted to our YouTube page, and you can watch the recording there. So if you missed any of the past months, those have also been uploaded as well, and you can go ahead and rewatch. So if you want to see Ellie's art gallery, that's always a good one to watch.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you want to think about inviting us to your community to share that. So.
And then there was a question there about the November dates, and I'm pulling that up right now. We are meeting Tuesday, November 17 at 8 p.m. Central, the 18th at 3 p.m., not Central, Eastern, 8 p.m. Eastern on the 17th. On the 18th, it's 3 p.m. Eastern, and then the Spanish is the Thursday evening following that. So the week ahead of Thanksgiving.
Is it the week before?
I believe so.
Okay. Yeah, we put out word as you're all here, so you obviously heard the word. We put a little notice in the Just for Mentors. In the electronic version, you can actually save that link. But then we're also putting out a reminder for these on either the day before, or in this case for yesterday's group, it was the day of. So we're going to try what was requested by last night's group is that we do it a day before, which then would actually, for this group, make it 2 days before. So I hope that works out for you. If you get it a couple days in advance, save that email because that's your link to get in. And yeah.
And then I guess this also would be a good time to remind you guys that tomorrow afternoon, 5 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Eastern is our international prayer gathering. And you guys are all invited to join us. You should have received an email this week some point with information for joining that. Will be Zoom again. But our extension leaders in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK will be hosting our time of prayer tomorrow afternoon. So if you don't have that link, I'm going to put an email in the chat window that you can email. It's mentor@cpministries.org, and we will get you that link to join. But we did have another question in the chat, Doug, and they asked if we are supposed to sign our name in Tier 1 lessons.
Great question. That comes up periodically. I know that when I started here at Crossroads, that you were encouraged just to write your mentor just for this lesson or your mentor, whatever it was, but not to share your name. Well, as a former Crossroads student, it was, I didn't see him so much in the tier 2, but I did know the name of my, or in tier 1, I did know the name of my tier 2 mentor. We felt, as we discussed about it, we felt that we have enough safety precautions in place that it would be perfectly okay for, in fact, we would desire you to share your first name as a person with your student. It really personalizes, it puts a person with that handwriting. If you're uncomfortable with that, you can use your middle name. You can use a pseudonym if that's what you want to do. But we just strongly encourage you to just go ahead and put your first name down there. It makes you a real person and personalizes it. So, and we've had no trouble since doing that. So.
Awesome. And we've got a question from Matt Mack. I don't know if that what your full name is, but that's your screen name. I'm going to ask you to unmute, Matt, and then you can go ahead. Matt, if you are talking, we cannot hear you. Well, while you sort out some of that, the sound issues there, if you end up getting your audio to work, just jump right on in between questions, and we'll get your question answered. If it doesn't end up working, you can always type it into chat, and I'll make sure I ask your question. But we have a question from Lisa, who asks if we have a need for more tier 3 mentors.
Thank you for asking that, because that's a reminder for me. You know, our students, you know, are progressing through our lessons every day. We have students that are finishing either tier 1, or ready to move on to tier 2, or tier 2 ready to move on to tier 3. So the answer is yes, we would love it if you would consider tier 3, and also love it for those of you that are currently doing a tier 1, or I'm sorry, a tier 2, have a tier 2 mentoring relationship, if you would consider taking another student. Or if you're a tier 1 mentor and would consider having a one-on-one relationship with a student, we would love to have you on our list. That list has gotten smaller. We have about 20 or so in waiting for a tier 2 student, or they're waiting for a tier 2 student. We will go through that 20 really quick. When they process them, all of a sudden we use up 8 of them, and then all of a sudden we're down to 4, and then we've got to email everybody asking, will you take somebody? If you haven't thought about taking a tier 2 student or a tier 3 student before, I just want to strongly ask you to consider that. You know, journeying with somebody one-on-one is just a beautiful thing, and it can bring its challenges as well, but that's part of doing life together. And so I just want to, if you have any questions about it, just email the office. Jose and Elena will talk to you about that. We'd just like to invite you in for that type of relationship and take that next step in one-on-one mentoring. For those of you that want to consider tier 3, it's a more challenging level, but for many of you, it may not be insurmountable, and you may learn a lot from that. So we would love to talk to you about that as well. We used to have kind of stipulations where, you know, you had to be a theologian of sorts. Well, we've taken that away and have opened up the doors further on that. So we'd love to talk to you about that.
That answers one of the questions, if there was, what is the difference in expectation between tier 2 and tier 3? And on the mentor side of it, it's not much different. You'll still get a lesson, you'll still write a letter, but the material that the student is studying is a little heavier in its theology and doctrinal studies kind of thing. But you're able to study along with your student, so it's a great way to learn alongside another person. How do you become a tier 2 or tier 3? Is it, do you have to graduate? Do you have to, how do you get to a higher level?
Well, for a tier 2 student, I'll tell you from the student side, just so you're all aware, they finish their lessons. So they finish Survey of the Bible. So they've cruised through a lot of lessons. And then what we do is we invite them into the next level, which is the one-on-one relationship through tier 2. We ask them to fill out, well, we used to call it an application. It might still be called an application, but it's really a questionnaire. We just want to get to know more about the student. And we pass that off to you so that you have some background of who you're going to journey with. From a mentor side, no, you just need to contact us, contact Jose or Elena in the office and talk that through with them, and we will get you on that list, okay?
Thanks. And Artie reminded me in the chat there that tier 2 and 3, tier 3 lessons won't come every week the way a tier 1 lesson will. It's more about a typical student will have a lesson every 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
So that is a difference in tier 1 and one-on-one.
Right. So if you're currently thank you, Artie. So if you are currently a tier 1 mentor, what I encourage you to do is to say, if you indeed want to become a tier 2 mentor, just to continue to be a tier 1 mentor and take that on as an additional student, because we can make it so that if you get when that tier 2 lesson comes through the office, you'll get the tier 2 lesson, but you won't get another tier 1 lesson. So you're still only doing that one lesson for that week.
We did get Matt's question through the chat, and I think it's a great question. He says, not knowing what prison life is exactly like, can you give some examples of life application for students?
Oh, goodness. Oh, I don't have any lessons really in front of me for that, but you know, so I'll just talk a bit about the prisoner, and then maybe we can pull some out of that. Many of our prisoners, sorry for using that language, many of our students have struggled in life, and prison life is a struggle. You know, I think about, you know, I often will, when I go into the prisons, talk about, well, what does it mean to be a new creation, and how are we supposed to behave in that? And it's kind of along the lines of, what does it mean to be the salt in your life? You know, in that it means to me, it means that we need to be patient with others. So a life application piece for that, especially in prison that is so noisy and chaotic, and you're always on edge and you don't want to talk to people. And so a life application piece for that would be, what would it look like when someone who was not saying kind things to you or was acting in irrational ways, what does it look like to really stop and listen to what they're saying? Or a common challenge in prison is that, you know, people get bad news from home, and there's an old saying, and then what happens is that people kind of regress within themselves, and they end up isolating themselves even further from other people. They're walking the track by themselves, their heads are down. So what does it mean to be the salt? How can you come alongside of someone who seems to be struggling and alone? And how do you strike up a conversation with them? Just so that you can offer some kind words to somebody who's struggling. Is that a good enough application?
Okay, so I think that something to remember is that there's still things like poverty inside of facilities. You can still care for the poor. If you've got a cellmate or someone in your block that you know has lost someone, you can help them grieve and more. So there's lots of small things like that we can.
Or if somebody keeps asking you for soap or a hygiene product, and you just get sick of them asking for a hygiene product, what does it look like just to say, here's a soap? You know, you can have a soap and not be worried about him coming again the next time. But just for that time, just say, you know, you just be the hands and feet of Jesus, and just give them turn the other cheek and just give them a bar of soap.
Yeah. So yeah, life application looks a little different, but definitely still possible. And so yeah. Ron White asks if a mentor needs to do tier 2 before jumping to tier 3.
Does a mentor? Oh, that's a great question. I don't know for sure. What do you think, Alicia? That question doesn't come to me very often.
I would think that it would be smart to.
I think
just to get the experience of doing a one-on-one relationship before going into heavy theological material.
Yeah, and to get an understanding. One of the things that we had in place, you know, was that, you know, for a student to progress through tier 2, and then they get to the end of the tier 2 series, it's at that point where we ask the tier 2 mentor if we feel the student that they're journeying with would be equipped to move on to tier 3. And so we ask for your feedback on that. And at the same time, where it used to be that you had to be an official tier 3 mentor, now we're at a point where we ask you, would you like to continue to journey with that person in tier 3? And so that's a change that we've done over the past couple of years. Yeah, I would, just as Alicia said, I would strongly recommend that you be a tier 2 mentor for a while before you jump into tier 3.
And just to clarify, Jan H asked a question about sending hygiene items when they return the student to the lesson. That the example of just giving someone the soap, that was a student to fellow inside of the facility, not a mentor to student example. We unfortunately can't send things like that into a facility.
Well, I use that in just a prison thing. I use that example of soap because there are certain things that are pretty precious in prisons. Hygiene products are big items. They're actually used as trading things. They'll be used kind of as a monetary item. They have a value to them. And in prison, you know, when I was incarcerated, I had a job throughout the whole time that I was there, but I made 97 cents a day. So if you think about that, and then I had to supply the prison wouldn't give you hygiene products. So, or if you wanted to buy coffee, so you to buy things out of the commissary, you know, that 97 cents had to be used sparingly. But the challenge inside our prison system is that unemployment is very high. So not everybody is working inside the prison. And, you know, many of our students are, you know, for some of them, you know, going to prison was the last nail in the coffin with their relationship with others on the outside with their families. And they need to work towards rebuilding that. Or their families can't afford to send them money. And so for many of those that are incarcerated, they just have no money. And so when it comes to soaps or coffee or deodorant, there's a high value on that. And so it's not unusual, you know, for someone that needs soap to start asking people down the row, can I get a soap? Can I get a soap? And if that keeps repeating itself, it gets rather annoying for people. And so what does it look like just to throw them a soap? And what does that reflect?
Thanks. We have another question about a student who talked about mentoring other students and is wondering if that is an opportunity. And they also shared that another life application would be witnessing to other people in prison.
Mm-hmm. Walking on the track. How do we build building that relationship with that person so that we can actually witness to them?
Mm-hmm. Student mentoring students.
Oh, students mentoring students. Yeah, right. No, we do not. Currently we do not do that right now. Most Department of Corrections don't allow others, prisoners to write each other, because that's what it would, nor do we have the capacity to fulfill that. We are working towards having some of our more advanced courses be taught to leaders so they can actually do it in person inside of their prison. We're going to pilot that. But mentors, student in one prison mentoring another student in the other prison, probably most by law that would not be allowed.
Thanks. Annette, you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yes, actually, so I was trying to clarify what I said about mentoring students. Somebody had asked about some of the applications, and I've had students who said that, because they were further along in their lesson, they would help other students who maybe were just starting out. So that's what I meant by the mentoring students.
Oh, that are like in their facility?
Yes.
Mm.
And then there's some of the students who have said that they want to be able to witness to other students or try to invite other students to the program. So I was thinking those might be some of the things we can encourage them to use the lesson to learn how to, be mentoring those other students or, witnessing to those other students.
Yeah, and it's good to see you, by the way. Especially you take that thought a little bit further. I mean, if a student is recruiting other students, he knows who he's recruiting. I mean, these are things that you could encourage, that if that's your student is recruiting other students, could they together do their Bible lessons together out on the yard or in their unit, if they're in their unit? That's something else that could be encouraged as well.
I like that. Thanks, Annette, for clarifying. It is a good opportunity for life application.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Lynn Mole asks, she says that she's been using RBC Ministries, which is now called Our Daily Bread, with Who Are You lessons. And is that something that we encourage?
Say that one more time. Sorry, one more time.
She's been sending Our Daily Bread with Who Are You lessons. And do we encourage mentors to do that?
Not in your lessons, not inside the package. You can ask Our Daily Bread to send them material to the prison, but not and don't put it in your lessons if at all. I mean, just because that's going to get snagged. Everything in your lesson needs to be Crossroads related. It needs to be on Crossroads stationery and the lesson, and just keep it to that.
One of the last pages in your mentor training handbook will have instructions on how to go to Our Daily Bread and request that they send your student materials. Mm-hmm. So that would be how you can get them Our Daily Bread.
Our Daily Bread's a great partner, and they really have a lot of good material that they're willing to give to those that we serve.
Yeah. Another question. Oh, is that Lynn?
Yeah. I'm not really good on this Zoom, this is like not my thing.
You're doing great.
Yeah.
Not really. But in any case, I'm only working on my second person in the tier 1. And now after listening to you, I have written way too much on the Great Truths of the Bible Roadmap 2, because I'm finding people.
Oh, she froze, did she not?
She did. It looks like she might be on her way back. Possibly.
When that happens, when that happens, I wonder if I'm the one that froze or the person froze.
It looks like she's, Lynn, you're back now, I think. Go ahead. Keep asking your question.
Okay. So what happened is I realized when I looked at their roadmap, it seemed they didn't really read the scriptures carefully, you know, in the sense that most of the scriptures for a particular day or something like that have a theme, like you said before. Mm-hmm. And I was writing to show her and to tell her that it would be good for her to expand a little bit more on what she's trying to say. It's almost like a text. Mm-hmm. You know how texts are good for, like, when you want to say something very quick or very short. You don't write a whole lot, like a whole letter on a text. Mm-hmm. But people are doing that more and more. They write less and less, and then you don't really understand what they're really trying to say. You know, you can't say certain things in 3 words. It's crazy. Right. So I wound up just spending an entire day going through all the scriptures for a week, trying to get the gist of it in order to get the points in those scriptures along to her. And it just looked like I wrote all over it and she just wrote little tiny things. Mm. So I feel like, should I allow it to be lost in the mail? Because
she froze again.
Did I lose you?
There, you're back.
Okay.
You know, you got froze there at the end, but I just want to encourage you just to do the best that you can. And that if you write it in an encouraging, because it's great that we challenge our students. If they're, giving you a two-word answer, well, you can use the have you thought about X? It's a great way to challenge them. Have you thought about it? This is what I see in the scripture. Have you thought about? And so don't feel bad about challenge, as long as you do it kindly. Challenge them, and then also attach a piece of encouragement to them. To get to your point about writing all over the roadmap, that brings into mind that I get asked the question, how long should our letters be? So what we ask for the letters is that they are at least a full page long, mm-hmm. That they are either typed or printed, mm-hmm. if possible, unless you have really beautiful, clear cursive.
Oh, really?
Try not to use cursive because, they don't teach cursive anymore, but I know some people don't know how to print anymore once they've cursived for the last 40 years.
Yeah, right.
So we give you a little break with that. Mm-hmm. And we used to say handwritten only, but, we have to take into consideration that, people have tremors or they have hand injuries and that type of thing, or their penmanship is just not so good like mine. That typing is actually better. But if you type, then please, no matter how bad your handwriting is or how much tremors you may have, just go ahead and just write a little note on there and then sign your name as well.
Gotcha.
And as far as length of your letters, that's really up to you. So if it's a minimum of a page, then go ahead and write 2 or 3 pages if that's on your heart. That's awesome if you do that. And if you need extra stationery to go with that, you can actually go online to cpministries.org, and we have that available to you that you can actually print off at home. And if that doesn't work for you, you can actually contact the office and ask for stationery. Or you can also ask for envelopes if you're a tier 2 or tier 3 mentor that writes letters in between the lessons. We'll be happy to send those to you. And as far as writing in the lessons, we strongly encourage. Just go ahead, just mark the lessons up. Just mark them up. That's okay. That shows that you're reading the lesson and you're engaging with them, and people would appreciate seeing the marks in the lesson.
Good. Well, I'll learn, I guess, as I go along.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lynn and Doug. Another question from Matt, and he asks if it's okay to encourage your tier 2 student to share about their personal life if they're comfortable.
Absolutely. But the same question needs to be asked of you. How much are you willing to share of your personal life? Because it's a two-way relationship. And how can you do that well? I would strongly encourage you to share your pieces of your personal life, your hurts, your hard parts. That makes the relationship real, as well as your joys. And if we're the example to our students, they in turn hopefully will reciprocate with the relationship. Remember, some of our students never really had a Christian. I mean, they're learning how to journey as Christians, and so sometimes we have to be the example.
Thank you. A question from Jan on postage. She had a friend where the clerk issued more than one stamp on a lesson. And so she's asking, is a lesson plus a roadmap and letter just one stamp?
I learned something new. Both Alicia and I learned something new. Apparently, so we asked the mentors last night, oh, well, what does it cost for postage? Because I shared that I would just be lazy and put 2 stamps on it and make sure it got through. But what I'm told is that the post office issue, if you go to the post office, you can actually get 2-ounce stamps. It was called a butterfly stamp.
Yes.
And so I'm told that works well for people. So there are 2-ounce stamps out there that are less expensive than putting 2 forever stamps on it.
And again, if you forget that, if you go into your mentor training handbook, when we talk about how to put materials back into the envelope to send to the student, I don't know what page that is, but we do put in there the number of ounces that you'll need for the lesson to send back. And I'm pretty sure it's 2.
Last I knew, I don't know if it's still accurate or not. I thought it was around 76 cents is the total cost. I don't know what the cost of a 2-ounce stamp is. I don't recall that, but if you're going to do it regularly, I would probably, if I was doing that, I can cheat. I put them in the office mail, but I would encourage you to get 2-ounce stamps, and that would be sufficient.
Matt asks again, is it okay to ask students about their lives in prison specifically?
I would say yes. You could phrase it a nice way. You could phrase it, tell me about what your day-to-day looks like. Tell me what your day-to-day looks like. That would be a less invasive way to do that. I'm sure they'd be happy to share.
That's all of the questions that have come in. We did get a book recommendation that there's a book by Alice Johnson. Marianne, do you know the title of that book that we could look it up some more? She says it's a must read for mentors. But I don't have a title to share. Marianne, I can see you unmuted. Go ahead.
Yes.
Ah, there you are. Hello.
Yes. That's a recent book. She was in prison for life for a drug traffic thing, a nonviolent crime, 21 years in prison. And then she got released and she was pardoned recently by the president. But she explains how she witnessed, and she was very involved in theatrical productions in prison. And it's just fantastic. It's good knowledge for us to know how some prisoners do witness, and they're just, God uses them in prison.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a great reminder, Marion, is that just to remind your students that God can use them right where they are.
Exactly.
And if they're reminded of that often, that'll help them reflect on how can they do that.
I think the title of the book is A Journey from Incarceration to Freedom.
Mm.
Thank you. Yeah.
She might have been a speaker at the Calvin series.
Yes, I think that's
was she a speaker at the Calvin series? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I just want to close with one thing, but first I just want to say thank you all. I know this is my favorite part of the day, really the week, is just to gather together with you as the church and as like-minded people that appreciate what it means to journey with those that we serve, to put your time and energy and really most of all your heart into what you do. It's reflected every time that I come to meet with you as a group. I just wanted to share that I just finished the December just for mentors. I just turned it in. And it got me to thinking about what season we're in. We're in the holiday season, and the holiday season always brings back a lot of memories for me of back when I was incarcerated. And these memories go back 20 years ago, yet they're as fresh as they happened yesterday. I had small children. I had a wife that was journeying with me, and I was far from home. I was 6 hours from home, and so I was just thinking about that because personally, and and as I go into the prisons here when there's not a virus anyway. I've been going into the prisons, into the state prisons here for a lot of years, and have journeyed a lot of holidays with those that are incarcerated. And this season brings a general sense of longing inside prison walls. It brings, I've had many discussions with prisoners about this. It brings back memories of what could have been, the loss that that has been brought upon not only those themselves, because invariably they're more concerned about those that they left behind, their children that are growing up without them. Those that we serve, their Christmases will be much different than any of ours. There'll be no gatherings. There'll be really no celebrations. I was talking to my wife, Hendrina. We were talking about, well, should we be saying Merry Christmas to those that we serve, and she loves going into the prison, and but she said, oh my gosh, I struggle with that. I struggle with saying Merry Christmas. I just can never do it. I feel so guilty. And I just want to encourage you during this season, because Thanksgiving is coming and Christmas is coming. Just want to encourage you to not have any guilt and to go ahead and say Merry Christmas. Please do it. But with that, a note of why you're saying Merry Christmas to them, because their Christmas is going to be different. Maybe you can say a few empathetic words with them, and just try to be extra encouraging to them in the next number of lessons. And for those that are tier 2 and tier 3 mentors here, if you can find the time to send a few extra notes to them, they don't have to be long letters, but just thinking of you type letters to your students, separate from your lesson, that would be a wonderful thing to do during this season. So thank you again for coming. Again, next time Aaron will join us. And if you have any questions or thoughts, you can email us at mentor@cpministries.org. We'd love to hear any thoughts or ideas that you're having, and I'll get those. So we'll stick on. Alicia and I will stick on until everybody's gone if you have a last thought or something you want to share. So just thank you for coming and sharing your time with us.